Ringo Starr, born Richard Starkey on July 7, 1940, grew up in Liverpool's Dingle district in a working-class home where life was often uncertain. His father left when he was just 3 years old, leaving his mother, Elsie, to raise him alone while working multiple jobs. From the very beginning, stability was something he rarely experienced. His childhood took another dramatic turn when illness struck. At 6, he underwent surgery for appendicitis, but complications led to a severe infection that kept him in the hospital for a long recovery. Years later, tuberculosis forced him into a sanatorium for an extended stay. These long periods away from normal life kept him isolated from school and everyday childhood experiences. But during this time, something unexpected happened. He was introduced to music. Hospital staff used rhythm exercises and simple instruments to help children recover emotionally, and this was where he first connected deeply with percussion. It was a quiet beginning, but it planted the seed of everything that would come later. Finding rhythm in a changing world. As a teenager, Ringo Starr struggled academically due to years of illness and absence from school. Eventually, he left education early and entered the working world, taking on manual jobs to support himself. Like many young men in post-war Liverpool, life was practical, not glamorous, and music was more of a hobby than a career plan at first. That changed in the late 1950s when he joined local skiffle groups, performing in small venues and learning rhythm through instinct rather than formal training. Skiffle music, simple, energetic, and raw, was spreading across Britain, and it gave him his first real taste of performing live. His natural sense of timing and steady beat made him stand out. When he eventually joined Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, he began developing both confidence and identity as a drummer. It was also during this period that he adopted the name Ringo Starr, a persona that matched his growing presence in Liverpool's music scene and set the stage for something much bigger. The Beatles and the beginning of Everything changed in 1962 when Ringo Starr was invited to join a rising band called the Beatles. Replacing Pete Best was not an easy transition, and early audiences were divided. Some fans resisted the change, but the band's internal decision was based on musical chemistry rather than popularity. Over time, Ringo's style proved essential. He was not the most technical drummer, but his strength lay in feel, timing, and serving the song rather than overpowering it. This became one of the defining elements of the Beatles' sound. As the band evolved through the 1960s, his drumming adapted with it, from the tight structure of early rock and roll to the experimental textures of later albums. His work on songs like Come Together and A Day in the Life demonstrated how subtle rhythm choices could transform a track completely. Slowly, he became more than just the drummer. He became part of the band's identity: fame, pressure, and a fracturing band. By the late 1960s, the Beatles were no longer just a band. They were a cultural force under immense pressure. Creative differences began to pull the members in different directions. John Lennon moved toward experimentation. Paul McCartney focused on structure and melody, and George Harrison was growing as a songwriter in his own right. Inside the studio, tensions became increasingly visible. The presence of Yoko Ono during recording sessions also changed group dynamics, creating friction among the members. Amid all of this, Ringo Starr often felt caught in the middle, sometimes disconnected from the creative arguments happening around him. At one point, he even briefly left the band during the White Album sessions, feeling undervalued and isolated. However, his absence made one thing clear: the Beatles needed him. They reached out, and he eventually returned. The reunion was emotional but temporary, as deeper problems within the group were already impossible to ignore. The end of the Beatles and a new beginning. By 1970, the Beatles officially disbanded, marking the end of an era. For Ringo Starr, it was both a loss and a new beginning. Instead of rushing into mainstream rock, he chose something personal for his first solo project, an album of classic songs he grew up listening to. His early solo work showed a different side of him: sentimental, reflective, and rooted in nostalgia. While critics were unsure at first, his music gradually found its audience. Songs like It Don't Come Easy and Photograph, especially his collaborations with former bandmates, proved that he could succeed outside the group. His 1973 self-titled album became a major milestone, bringing together contributions from former Beatles members and other major artists. It was one of the rare moments where the spirit of the band briefly returned in spirit, if not in name. Struggles behind the public image. Behind this success, however, life was far from stable. Like many musicians of his era, Ringo Starr struggled with alcohol and substance use during the 1970s. Fame, touring, and personal pressures created a cycle that became difficult to escape. His marriage to Maureen Cox eventually ended, and family life became strained during those years. This period was marked by instability, both emotionally and personally, but it also reflected a broader reality of the rock and roll lifestyle at the time. Many musicians face similar struggles while navigating sudden fame and constant public attention. For Ringo, the turning point came later when he recognized the need for change, not just for himself, but for the people around him. That realization eventually led him toward recovery and a more stable phase of life: recovery, reinvention, and the all-star band. In the late 1980s, Ringo Starr took an important step toward rebuilding his life. After entering rehabilitation and committing to sobriety, he began to regain control over both his health and career. One of his most successful ideas came in 1989 when he formed the All-Star Band, a rotating group of legendary musicians performing together on stage. Unlike traditional bands, this project celebrated collaboration. Artists like Joe Walsh, Billy Preston, and others joined him, creating concerts where every performer shared the spotlight. Audiences responded strongly to this format, and the tours became a long-running success. The All-Star Band was not just about nostalgia. It was about unity, respect among musicians, and the joy of live performance. For Ringo, it marked a peaceful and creative chapter, one that allowed him to continue performing without the pressures of being in a single dominating group. A legacy built on simplicity and feel. As time passed, the world began to reassess Ringo Starr's role in music history. While he was often seen as the most understated member of the Beatles, his drumming style became recognized for its emotional intelligence rather than technical complexity. He focused on serving the song, something many later musicians came to admire. Drummers like Phil Collins and Dave Grohl have praised his instinctive style, noting how his simplicity created some of the most memorable rhythms in rock history. Over time, his contribution became clearer. He wasn't just keeping time, he was shaping the feel of some of the most influential music ever recorded. A complicated life, a lasting influence. The life of Ringo Starr is not a simple story of fame or success. It is a journey shaped by hardship, reinvention, mistakes, recovery, and endurance. From a sick child in Liverpool to a global music icon, his path reflects both the beauty and the chaos of fame. He remains one of the most recognizable drummers in history, not because of complexity, but because of feel, honesty, and consistency. And while his life has had difficult chapters, it also shows the possibility of change and rebuilding. In the end, his story is not just about the Beatles or fame. It is about survival, rhythm, and the human ability to keep moving forward even after everything falls apart.